All right, welcome back. We are Game 3001 in the winter 2021 semester, and it's week 7, part 1 of our broadcast. In this part, I'm going to be talking about a couple things. One thing I'm going to talk about is the details for the midterm test. Midterm test, again, is due Sunday at midnight. So you have from now until Sunday at midnight to get it done. There are 60 questions, true, false, multiple choice from a pool of different kind of randomized pools. You'll have 55 minutes to complete the test, and you'll have 2 attempts. For those people with accommodations, you'll get multiple attempts, and as well as longer times, depending on your accommodation letter, as stated in my announcement this morning. Again, this week, it's not mandatory that you attend lecture or lab, but I will be available during those 2 time frames to make sure that you guys have everything you need to do your test and get support. But what I also wanted to talk about today was 2 things. This is actually due Sunday, April 18th at midnight. And it's also a sign up of 3 members. This is for A3 groups. And this one is going to be for A4 groups, which we're going to talk about and after the first one. I'll make a separate video just for assignment 4, so you don't have to be, you can always go to assignment 4 video. So now I'm going to go into the details for assignment 3 and then get into assignment 4. But where we're sitting right now is we're sitting at the bottom of week 7. So again, next week is the mid-semester break, so there's no classes officially. So hopefully if you're watching this this video at some point, then you know that there are no classes next week. So please don't try to attend. That'll be bad. No one's going to be here. But I will be making sure that everything is up to date. Anything that hasn't been marked will be marked by next week. And you should have some results. But we're sitting in at the week of February 23rd, and this week's the midterm test. So assignment 3 is going to be due, if you notice, the week of March 23rd to 28th, which is week 11. And I'll be talking about the details of assignment 3 right now. Let's take a look. So actually assignment 3 and 4 are 2-parted. And one part is decision making, and the second part, which I'm going to talk about in the next video, is about AI behavior. So that's a little bit more challenging than what we've had so far. So up until now, you've been doing steering behaviors, which was assignment 1, and the second one, which most of you did and handed in, is assignment 2, which was pathfinding. All right, so behaviors, kind of like some steering, pathfinding. Now we're into decision making, and finally, at the end, we're going to be into AI behaviors, and we'll talk about all those things as we go forward. One thing also to keep an eye out is the final test, which will be out week 15, will be a practical test. So that's something that's going to come out. That's the plan anyway. The plan is to make it a practical test, and that means that you'll be actually doing something coding-wise for the final test. And that we've done that for a couple of reasons. We wanted to give you a chance to do true, false, multiple choice, but not bog you down with all the details of, kind of doing that as an example, twice, right? So that's kind of the idea behind it. So really what it was an opportunity for us to do, again, kind of a couple of different modalities, and the final test should be practical. Again, I'm going to take a look. I have to work it with Alex, but I think that's the plan for now. So that's something we're going to come up with for you guys by the end of semester. But so keep your eye on that. That's going to happen. But assignment 3, again, due week 11. Assignment 4 is going to be due week 14. I'll go into the details. Let's just get back to assignment 3. So assignment 3, decision making. Again, this is interesting. We're going to allow groups of up to 3. One thing to note with these assignments, and if you look up on Blackboard, please, you'll see that under the assignments section on Blackboard, both assignment 3 and assignment 4 are listed. Assignment 3 is worth 10%, assignment 4 is worth 15%. But notice it says at the bottom, group membership required. In order for you to submit your assignment, you must join a group up to 3 members in the group set A3 groups. Notice that there's different group sets that I've created for you guys. So that way, if you didn't like your group membership from A2, assignment 2, you can switch into different group members, but you need to re-sign up and re-register for groups for both A3 and A4. And I've done this before because in the past, we've had complaints, like we said before, where people said, I really don't like my team members. Can you take me out of there? And the way it's going to work is as soon as you sign up for a team, then that's the team you stay with for that particular assignment. And then you stay into it the entire time. If you, kind of want to, sign up with a group member that doesn't seem to do anything, you're not happy with them, then you stay with them for that assignment, and then the next assignment you're able to switch out and go into another assignment group. So that's what we've done. This, I know it's a little bit more complicated because you need to keep signing up, but the good part about this is that you'll have some flexibility. So again, please make sure that for assignment 3 you sign up for a new group, which is in the group set A3 groups, and there are 50 groups that I've created that accommodate up to 3 people. All right, so that is assignment 3 group requirements. Let's get back to this. So there's some mandatory criteria marked in this assignment, just like the other assignments, but these are because assignment 3 is a foundation or is required in order for you to do assignment 4, then I got to talk about kind of both of these assignments in tandem, kind of one, and then afterwards, let's talk about the other one. And that's why I'm making these 2 videos and I've released both assignment 3 and 4 at the same time. So project setup, you must use a template provided on Blackboard as a base. The template that we're providing, of course, whether it's on Blackboard or somewhere else, it's on GitHub for now, is the assignment framework that we've presented to you, which is the SDL engine. Again, over the break, I'm probably going to do a little bit of maintenance on the SDL engine. I've got some input from different users in the community as well that they wanted me to add a couple things like different kinds of other functionality and fix some of the errors we have and the glitches I'm going to be working on with Alex, which is that weird I'm GUI glitch we're going to fix so that we don't have that problem going forward. So please, the template provided is the one I want you guys to use as a base. Start scene, you're still going to have a start scene. I mean, these are kind of free marks at this point. The start scene has always been there from A1. And all you're doing is you're just going to make a little start that allows you to get ready to play the scene. So it goes from your start scene into your play scene. And the play scene is where all the fun happens. So again, start scene, play scene are both mandatory. The play scene, you must include a node class as discussed in class. We're going to discuss what the node class looks like. It's different than the tile class or the grid class. So in this case, in assignment 2 and 3, we're actually going to be creating a structure of nodes. And we'll talk about this in a second. You're going to create a collection of node pointers to enable iteration across all nodes. And this could be an STL vector, standard template library vector, a list, or other structure. That's really up to you what you want to make. Ensure you select an appropriate actor sprite. So one of the things that we always tell you is get your own sprites, guys. I'm going to definitely give you some examples in lab, and so is Alex. But your requirement is to make your own or get your own sprites. If you are a technical artist, it's okay for you to use your own assets and everything else, but your actor sprite's got to be your own. So this could be a spaceship, car, character, or other appropriate vehicle or avatar. The actor will be able to move in any direction by responding to key presses, so that's WASD as an example, or by using the left stick on a gamepad and face in the direction of the mouse pointer, or by using some kind of right stick control on the gamepad. So now what you're doing is you're actually going to direct the actor to move around the scene, whether you're using a gamepad, right, or whether you're using a mouse and keyboard combination. It's truly up to you what you want to do. But the idea here is that you have full control and that the actor will face in the direction that they're moving. All right, so the next part is create an interesting map. And actually, we've been talking about this. Interesting map means this is some creativity. you could add some background graphics or tiles. Again, what I'm hoping to do over the break is give you a map loader functionality where you can actually load in a map that you create. I'm also going to talk about a really cool tool. I've talked about it really briefly with some of you, but I really like this tool that I like to use called Texture Packer. I think it's a great little tool. And if you're making anything with 2D, as an example, Texture Packer is a great little tool. It's not free. It costs $50 or so Canadian. But the great thing about this is you can create a texture atlas or a tile map in the background. So this is something that I've been using. I've also got a different exporters. One, it'll do great Unity tile sets. That's what this is for. But we can also use Texture Packer with a custom exporter that I've made for SDL. And the custom exporter that I've done for SDL allows you to output to an SDL text file, as well as with the text file, you can actually, it's more like your atlas is what it does, right? So that's what it does. And then you have a texture file, and the texture file is really cool. So the texture file actually accumulates all the textures that you have here. And so there's a bit of a process, and hopefully I'm going to put a video together for you guys to go through how to create a sprite sheet using Texture Packer. Again, highly recommend if you're going to make 2D games to have a tool like this, which is way better than doing it by hand. All right, so that is going to be, I don't have to modify anything. So that's going to be Texture Packer. The other thing we're going to ask you to do when it comes to a map is, and I think I've shown you this all before, is something called tiled. So if you look at tiled, the tiled map editor, what you can do with tiled is create a tiled map set on the background. And if you haven't had a chance to download tiled, please do so. I'm going to go through the details how to use tiled for us, most likely in a video. I probably won't include it live. It'll probably be asynchronous. So to show you how to do it, and then to create a kind of a tiled map in the background. This might also help you with your game production games if you're doing this kind of stuff, if you don't have something like this already. I know that Alex has also covered it in his lectures, so that's kind of really cool. But how do you bring this into our SDL engine? And the assignment framework is what I'm going to be covering, how to do that. So please, if you haven't had a chance to do that, please download Tiled, which is great. And there's some great support for Tiled and a bunch of, I would say, really good documentation on how to use it. There's also a Tiled, a TMX importer that's we're probably going to bring in most likely for SDL engine, so allows you to download and install, or kind of include everything from this inside of your assignment framework. We'll see how it goes though, because no promises, but that's what we're talking about. We're talking about making an interesting, kind of background. I'm talking about making something that makes sense for you. Some people have asked to use their game production games as a structure for the assignment, and the answer for that is always this. It's on you. I'm not going to be talking about how to make use of your assignment for your framework that you're using for your game, but if it satisfies the requirements of the assignment and it's using SDL and C++, you're good to go. I'm okay with accepting it as long as it does everything that we've asked here. But you're going to find that using the assignment framework just might be easier because of all the details that we've included. All right, so that's what interesting map means. Make something that's in the background that's overlaid on top of the nodes. So imagine that each map node is going to be kind of, underlying underneath the map, right? Or invisible. It's going to be a non-renderable game object. Again, this can be creative. Ensure the map includes obstacles, so you can have mountains or walls or debris or something that are impassable. This is important. And you may use a tile map set or simply draw your map tiles individually. It's totally up to you. Your Playscene must include appropriate background music. So one thing I'm asking for in this one is, this is going to be like a mini game. Ensure that the volume is set to a reasonable level, so don't drown us out. And add simple sound effects for various actions or triggers in the Playscene. And this may include, but is not limited to, the actor moving across the map, firing a bullet, getting hit, whatever. Okay? And if you're like, wait, that's like a little game that you're asking you to make. Yes, I'm asking you to make a little game. so that means, well, how can we do that? That's why I'm giving you the option to do it in groups of 3. Someone can kind of pull together the sounds. Another person can kind of do the structure, use the structure of the code, and hopefully all of you will be able to combine to create something that is exciting at the end of the day. All right, so that is your Playscene base requirements, and that's worth 18 points. Let's keep going. So here are some of the requirements for the actual project itself. So once you have your base scene, what you want is it'll set up some key elements that we're going to reuse in assignment 4, right? Remember, this is the base for assignment 4, so that's why it's important you get this right. This includes things like line of sight, some kind of detection radius. So I look at these two things as almost like a sensing suite. When I talk about a sensing suite, I kind of look at these two things. Some way of doing line of sight, and another way of doing some kind of detection radius. Player movement, all right, is something that you're going to include, enemy movement, and other things. So that's what you're going to be setting up in assignment 4. You also need some kind of debug view, and I've given you some key presses. So when the user presses the H key, your program will toggle into debug view. All right, so this could display line of sight rays that are coming basically from the character, all right, or from the autonomous characters, the AI to the character, some kind of detection radius, we should be able to see that, collider boundaries, and node points. Okay, so those are all the things that we want to see. And you can use the debug tools and drawing tools that I've provided for you in your assignment framework or make your own. Okay, so that's the debug view. And I think I had a little diagram to show you guys here, which is something that I had pulled together. Let's look at, and I wanted to show you this because I think it's important we have something to look at. So here is what we're talking about. Let's suppose you have a bunch of nodes, and these nodes, and I've just placed these blue nodes kind of stuff here. We'll talk about this, right? In your first project, which is assignment 3, what you're going to have is, and let's pull this actually into, I'll pull this actually into here for a second. Let's see if I can actually do this. There we go, it's better. So in what you're actually going to have is, imagine if you have the player. So here's the player. Notice that they have a bit of a health bar here. And you have your base enemy. So you're going to create a base enemy class that wanders around. The base enemy is going to have two things, line of sight, right? So a sight line of some kind, as well as a detection radius. So the detection radius and the line of sight are going to be part of its sensing suite, as an example, right? So if the base enemy can see the player, then it can do different things. For example, fire at the player or whatever, or come closer to the player. If the player is inside of the detection radius, that is also going to provide a kind of a way of the enemy detecting the player. So really it's about detection at this point. We have, let's suppose, 4 enemies here in this example, and there are different cases. So here's case 1, where I have no line of sight because, let's say, for example, I'm drawing a line, which is a collider between my enemy, my base enemy, and my player. This is the idea that we're going with, right? So I'm drawing a line here, and because it's colliding with other things, so here's an obstacle as an example that it's colliding with before it actually hits the player, the line, right, as an example, then, and because this obstacle is closer to the base enemy than the player, right, then we know that there's no line of sight. Okay, this is one way of detecting or having line of sight. Also, we know that radius, the player is not colliding or overlapping with the radius, so the player's collider, let's say as an example, or bounding box, is not overlapping with the detection radius of the base enemy. Therefore, both those conditions, line of sight and radius, are both false in this case. Case 2 is where, the enemy can't see the player, so there's no line of sight, as an example, but the player is inside of the enemy's detection radius. And so this would be case number 2, where line of sight will be false, and the radius, detection radius, would be true. And then there is the third case. Here's the third case where the line of sight is true and the radius is false. So I have line of sight to the player, but here as an example, the is outside of the detection radius, but I can see the player here from this enemy. You see that there are no obstacles that are blocking the enemy. And then there's finally the fourth case where both are true. Both the enemy can see and that the player is also in the detection radius. So those are four different cases that I can possibly think of that when it comes to the enemy. These little blue areas here, and I've just kind of put them randomly on the map, are nodes. Okay, and you can put as many of these nodes as you like, but I recommend kind of creating nodes that are quote unquote walkable. So example would be this. If I want to move the base enemy and I want to move around the obstacle, because the base enemy should be able to navigate around the obstacle, right, as an example, then they're going to go to a node that has line of sight with the player. And we'll talk about that in a second. So this is kind of the setup for assignment 3. All right, let's get back to the details. So again, so we talked about line of sight rays, right? And as well as detection radius. Those two things are things that we want to be able to see inside of your when I press the H key. I press the H key, those lines turn on, and I can see kind of the debug view of your scene. All right, then debug keys is 2 points. The user will be able to activate certain effects by pressing various keys. When the cape key is pressed, the base enemy will take damage. So I can kill the enemy because all we're doing is here is setting a foundation for assignment 4, right? When the P key is pressed, the base enemy's movement will be toggled between idle and patrol. Okay, so notice that there are 2 states. So there's an idle state and a patrol state. Okay, when the P key is pressed. When it comes to player animations and sound effects, you can see that those are worth 5 points. The user will trigger various animations and sound effects for the player. An idle animation when no input is triggered. A movement animation and related sound effect when key presses, WASD or gamepad input is triggered. So some kind of movement animation for the player, not for the enemy here. A close combat animation and related sound effects when the left mouse button is pressed or the lower face button on the gamepad is pressed. Some kind of projectile firing animation and related sound effect when the right mouse button is pressed or the right face button on the gamepad is pressed. So obviously the player is going to have both close combat capabilities as well as ranged capabilities. So the player can fire at the enemy or fight with them. So player combat capabilities, 8 points. The player can engage in both close combat, melee, and ranged combat, shooting. For close combat, the player must be within an appropriate range. You have to determine that. Maybe it's going to be X number of pixels. And facing the enemy. This is important. So player facing is an important thing. And this is in order for them to register a hit. All right, so this is the first part. For range combat, the player will fire an appropriate fire and forget type of projectile. I think Alex has talked to you guys about what that is. Fire and forget in the direction they are facing. And then the player's orientation is set to follow the position of the mouse pointer or moving the right stick on the gamepad. So wherever you're going to be looking where you're going, that kind of idea. That's the player combat capabilities. The player is also going to have a health bar. So this is an important piece of, it's part of your health system. It's a very simple part, but it's still part of there. Player must include a health bar object that displays the health status of the player in real time. That's what I'm going to be asking for. And this could be a solid bar or a series of symbols. So you can make it so that it's heart symbols if you like, if that's more stylish for you, or a health bar. And here you can see in my example, I'm just using a health bar for the base enemy, right? And the health bar for the base player, right? Game status. Your Playscene will include a progress bar or progression bar, score label, or other control that will display how many enemies are still active in the scene and how many have been eliminated. So that's why if you go back to the diagram, you can see that active enemies 4 should be displayed somewhere on the screen or something like that. It could also be a progress bar similar to a health bar, maybe a different color like blue that has X number of enemies left, or symbols, whatever you want. It's up to you. Obstacles. Your play scene must include at least 4 obstacles. And again, if you notice the diagram, I've included these random obstacles here in the play scene. Okay, so just some obstacles that are, kind of playing stuff. Let me just turn off my Steam for a second. Cancel. No, we don't want that to do that. Sorry. Valheim is a big game now, and unfortunately, I'm also running a dedicated server. Hopefully I didn't kill that dedicated server. Please no. Did I? Oh crap. That would be bad. Let's see that. Yeah, I killed my dedicated server. It's okay. I'll put that back up there, and hopefully my buddy can go on. Oops. Sorry, Dan. Anyway, let's continue. So obstacles, let's keep going. So your base enemy setup. All right, so obstacles we need. These obstacles must be solid and impassable, so you can't pass through them, not for the player or the enemy. Right, the obstacles will also block enemy line of sight. However, they will not block enemy detection radius. So the enemy can detect outside of the obstacles, and that's pretty important. Your game will include a base enemy class, and that's what we showed here, base enemy class. These are the ones. And the base enemy class, what we've got going on here is that the base enemy class is something you're going to build on in assignment 4, right? Okay. So the base enemy will move or patrol along a predetermined path of nodes around the map. So example, if I go back to my map, let's suppose I start over here in case 1, maybe I'm going to move in kind of in a different order. I might move from one node to the other node to the next node. Let's say I'm patrolling around here, and I don't have radius or line of sight. That's what's going to happen. It's going to kind of patrol around the map somewhere in a predetermined course. It's up to you how you want to do this. And I've seen really cool variations last semester on what some people did that are really, really cool. All right, so that is the base enemy. The base enemy game object will have a health bar, just like we saw before. And the enemy game object is hit, the health bar will display the correct value. So that's something that is going to happen. Base enemy animations and sound effects you're going to have. So that's going to have things like an idle animation when stopped, a movement animation, a damage animation, and a death animation. So there's 4 little animations that I'm asking for you guys to put together. All animation states and sound effects will be demonstrated during the game for full marks. And again, we talked about those 2 things, base enemy line of sight and base enemy detection radius. Notice that these things are all marked mandatory because they're required for assignment 4. Okay. So enemy line of sight, base enemy will need to calculate and keep track of whether or not they have line of sight with the player. Okay, so that's kind of important. You'll need to account for any obstacles that may block line of sight in the calculation, and the result can be stored in a bool in an instance property on the enemy. That's line of sight. Base enemy detection radius, we talked about that. Set up a simple algorithm that determines the player is within enemy's detection radius. This could be an overlap. It can be stored as a Boolean, and it will be used for the next assignment. All right, use Git and GitHub for source control. We asked you about this. And from a submission requirements perspective, remember that you're doing a couple things. You're zeroing out the garbage files. Looking for a valid link to your GitHub repo, as well as a short video presentation like before, for you and your team members' names. Okay, so make sure you have those in there. Again, one thing that we won't do is we will not accept any assignment without a video that meets the above requirements. Okay. Also, try and keep within the 5-minute limit. Some people go outside of that limit, and it becomes, with a lot of different marking, it becomes longer for us to mark for those things. All right. So again, 5 minutes is what we're looking at. Really, what you're doing here is you're demonstrating your game. You're talking a little bit about your code. Because you're just going to show us that everything works, the things that we've required. If it takes a little bit more than 5 minutes, that's okay, but please don't make it 30 seconds. Here's my game, bye. That doesn't make any sense. It won't really satisfy requirements anymore. So this is weighted 10% of your grade, just like assignment 1 was weighted 10% of your grade. And again, the breakdown for marking is here. Okay, so these are where we kind of talk about how you get all the marks and everything else for this particular assignment. So this is the details for assignment 4. All right, now I only have a few people here that are online. Are there any questions from the people that I have here with me? I know I only have a few. Alex, I got Nestor and Nikolai. Guys, I know you're working on your test. If I'm not annoying you, any questions around assignment 3? All right, I'm going to stop talking about assignment 3, and I'm going to stop this video now, and then we're going to get into assignment 4 details in the next video.